Hey guys, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday,
Happy
Caitlin.
Tuesday. You know, there was a time in Tuesday Night Live that I didn't say Happy Tuesday.
I know, I don't know where it came from. It's bizarre, but there we go.
Just a lot of happiness coming out of Tuesday
Oh
Night
yeah,
Live.
I'm full of joy, full of beans.
We're excited to have you along for another night. To be hearing more from Ecclesiastes, digging deep into the Bible there, having question time afterwards.
Yep.
But Seno, every now and again we like to play some games here on Tuesday Night Live. We've had some contests with other people. We had a moment where you cheated live on camera with a
No.
cookie.
There's no evidence of that. I'm pretty sure I deleted that video.
You know, that was a fun game. It was fun watching you lose that game.
I don't generally lose, so yes, it's a rare thing.
It's a
So,
rare
yeah.
thing. But tonight we're gonna have another chance to
Right.
see if you're gonna cheat or if you're gonna if you're gonna win a game or if you're gonna lose a game.
Win.
We're gonna see. We're gonna find out. So I'm gonna pass it over to Rachel. She's got a guest with her tonight. So we've got a new friend in the
Wow,
studio.
yep.
So we're excited to have that. But I'll pass it on over to her to explain what is happening tonight with our game.
So hi all, I'm Rachel and I'm here with Tristan.
Hey, how are we?
So this is Tristan. For those who don't know you, what do you study at CSU?
I just finished my first year of a theatre media degree, so
Sweet.
big fun.
And with that I'm sure you do lots of acting.
Every
things
now and
like
then.
that.
Every now and then.
And so, acting, we are going to play a classic game of charades. So Tristan and I are going to take turns, we're going to do a little bit of an acting thing. And we are going to leave it up to Caitlin and Seno to guess what we're acting out. If you've got your telephones around or your laptops, type in the comments what you think it is. If you get it first, that's good because you've got a 10-second head start than they do. So if you can get it before them, then they're obviously not doing too well. But yeah, let's start charades. I'll hand it off to Tristan to act the first thing.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
I'm going to look this way.
Hammer.
Nail.
Bob the Builder. Running. Pedaling.
Cycling. Tour de France.
Cycle.
Bicycle.
Cycle.
Bike.
Tiny bike. On your knee.
Leg day.
Feet.
One
Foot.
word.
Cycle.
Pedal.
Cycle or pedal? Oh, unicycle!
Unicycle.
Yes!
Okie dokie. Good job, Caitlin. I think you
Yes,
got that
I'm
first.
relieved.
Oh, come on, that was. I'm sure I said it first.
Okay, so second one.
Movie.
One word.
One word. No, how many words? 7 words. First word is the. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
No, stop.
Um,
Second word. Raw.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh!
Yeah! In the game! In the game.
Oh, okay, Tristan's back. How to get there?
Alright, what's he doing? A movie.
Movie again.
One word
Oh no.
is
Listen. Eagle.
birds. Sounds like
Sounds like.
flying.
Oh,
Bird.
Dumbo. Yes! Wow. We're actually pretty good at this game.
We're alright, we're alright.
Okie dokie. Okie dokie.
Movie. How many words? One word. Hair.
Rapunzel.
Hairspray.
I
Tangled.
I got it.
Tangled.
Oh.
Yes, I got it! Yes!
Oh.
2 each.
We're getting so close. Okay, we're tying, aren't we?
We're tied on 2 each.
Okay.
This is an action or something, is it?
Yes. It's putting some.
Putting on a
backpack.
coat. Back.
Oh.
Skydiving!
Damn it! That was so bad. I'm like, I can't get it out. Okay.
It's terrible, isn't it? The moment you know what it is, but it's not coming out in English. It's coming out in blue. Yeah! Sorry. Movie.
Oh,
One
what
word.
is with these one words?
iRobot. No,
Driving?
kart racing. How many syllables?
2 syllables.
2 syllables.
I don't know how to do it.
Robotic. Is it like a robotic?
Robot.
What's something to
Android. No.
Was it a movie? A movie.
Oh, it's like
Driving.
a driving robot. A racing robot.
Driving robot.
Oh, is that movie with the Alita? Or,
iRobot.
no, it's Alita. No, it's...
Is it like talking cars?
Can you do the syllables individually?
2 syllables.
So what's the first syllable?
Robocop.
That's this is one of those moments where someone in the comments has got to be able to get it.
Does it sound like anything?
You set yourself a challenge here now, you can't do it. Does the syllable sound like something? Book? Car.
So it's a
like
car. Big car. What's a big car? Oh my goodness, Tonka truck.
Oh, this is terrible. I think yeah.
Guys,
I think we're gonna have to just surely someone can get it. No one's got it.
Big car.
My actions are
So the first syllable sounds like car. No.
Sounds like robot.
I'm going to speak and say put those 2 words into one.
Carbot. Bot car. Robot car.
Someone got it?
Someone got it.
Okay, looks like someone got it. What?
Cars.
Monster trucks.
Just not cars.
Who got it?
Who got it?
Transformers.
Transformers. Okay, that's 3 syllables. Right. I get it now. That was hard.
Okay.
So, can I just ask, which character were you trying to be there? Were you trying to be Bumblebee or Optimus Prime?
I was thinking more Optimus Prime.
Optimus Prime, right,
I was
okay.
thinking
Yeah.
cars, or like truck.
Yeah.
I got there in the end.
I don't know how we didn't get robot car.
And robot.
I don't know
I know, we were
how.
just like robot car. It's just robot car. That's all we know.
Okay. Okay. Let's keep going. Okay, now
Good work, people who are getting that one.
what are we doing this time? A movie.
A movie again.
And a book.
And a book. Okay.
Movie and a book.
We're ready for this.
4 words. Third word.
Karate Kid.
Ninja.
The Ninja Turtles.
That's only
Teenage-
3 words.
Teenage
Teenage Mutant
Mutant
Ninja Turtles! Yes! Yes! Me first!
That was literally me saying it! Guys!
You've got to say the thing, Caitlin.
Okie dokie. Hopefully my acting's not as bad with this.
Hey Rach, you can do it. We believe in you.
It's a TV show. And a book. How many words? 3 words.
2 words.
First word is the.
The.
Magic school bus.
You can't.
The Walking Man.
The Walking Dead.
Ooh. Ooh. Okay.
Okay, well that's all of the actions that we that's all of our charades. So I don't know, I wasn't keeping track of who actually came first.
I'm pretty sure I won.
Um,
I'm pretty sure
I think you stole some from me.
No.
but yes, thank you, Tristan.
Thank you.
For acting.
Thank you for having me.
You clearly did a better job than I did, because you could guess yours.
I mean, it was robot car.
I know.
I don't know how we didn't get robot car.
Tristan was really trying to help us off screen there, trying to be like, yeah, you're almost there.
I didn't know what else to add into it too. Anyway, thank you all for participating. If you're watching online, I hope some of you got it before Caitlin and Seno. And yeah, thank you. I'll pass it back to the lounge.
I'm surprised nobody out in the audience land didn't get Robocar, like Transformers.
Well, they
So-
did.
Oh, someone did
Yeah,
get
there was
that.
a
Oh,
lot
yeah,
of
they did.
people
Who-
starting to get.
Who was it who got someone guessed Forrest
I
Gump?
think Laura might have gotten it first, so I think she did really good. But look, I think a lot of people were on it and not us. But I think a lot of people
Oh,
were
yeah,
stuck
yeah,
with
yeah.
robot cars as well.
Michael Adams got Transformers. Did someone else get it before him? Oh yeah, Bridget.
Yeah, I think there was a bunch of
Oh
people.
yeah.
So there you
Okay,
go.
smarter than us.
Smarter than us. That one was definitely really hard, but you know, good work, Sanu.
Yeah. Thank
you. Don't know who won. We still don't know who won. You might
I'm sure
say
somebody
it
out
was
there
you, but I'm
can.
not sure.
Somebody out there's kept score.
Let us know how you went with that.
Yeah.
Probably a lot better than us. But so now we're coming to another point of Ecclesiastes.
Yep.
We're in Ecclesiastes chapter 7 tonight.
7.
Yeah?
I feel like you're saying the
Ev-
name of the book differently every time you say it.
I know. No one was going to pick up on that. Until you mentioned
Sorry,
it.
sorry, Caitlin. Just keep a count. How many different ways does Caitlin say Ecclesiastes?
You know, sometimes English just doesn't come out of your
Yeah.
mouth, and you've just
Yeah.
got to roll with it. You've just got to just keep.
That's
on
how I
going.
stole a few of the answers off you. I
Yeah,
think.
because I couldn't
Because you
speak
couldn't
English.
even English.
So Ecclesiastes.
Yes, yes.
Chapter 7.
Yeah.
But the whole book we've been learning about wisdom.
Yeah.
About what is wisdom,
Yeah.
what is true wisdom, how do we find wisdom, what is wisdom in work, in our lives. There's been so much wisdom throughout this whole book that the teacher has been trying to help us through. It's been really interesting for us to really dig down into that wisdom.
Yeah.
Um,
And this is a really different chapter of the book type, because so far we've been, in a sense, examining life with wisdom. We've been kind of applying, if you like, wisdom to the world. But tonight we actually get wisdom sayings. We get a whole lot of, classic wisdom sayings, bird in the hand's worth two in the bush. It's that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And so it's a real change in tone. He's not talking us through a topic. He's giving us wisdom, and so we're going to actually work through that.
Yeah, which will
tonight.
be really exciting, I think, to have those kind of sayings.
Yeah.
It's something that we're not used to.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wise words out there from a lot of different people, from people in our lives, and I want to invite you guys out there to actually comment perhaps some of the best wisdom that you've ever gotten. Whether it was from your parents, whether it's been from a movie or a book or just a friend that you know, share with us some of the best advice that you've received in life.
Yeah.
We'll chat about it in a second. But Sanu, how about you start off?
Yeah.
Share with us perhaps the best piece of advice that you've ever received.
I think probably the most important bit of advice I had is to I think live your life and take responsibility for your own life. So that is, don't blame other people for who you are. Own yourself. So there are lots of different forces and people and things that shape us as who we are. There's things that have shaped us in our life, but we are now grown. I'll just say grown. Grown adults, and we actually, part of being an adult is taking responsibility for yourself and not blaming other people for who you are. And that's actually a profound and really important and liberating piece of advice, because you're no longer trapped. If you blame other people for who you are, you're not free. You know what I mean? All of a sudden you're trapped and bound into this thing, but you're not bound or trapped. And so that bit of advice, to own up to who you are, take responsibility for you and your actions, and don't be blaming other people. So understand where you came from, understand the things that have influenced you and the people that have influenced you, but own your own actions.
And where did you hear that piece of advice from?
I honestly can't remember. I don't know. Maybe it just kind of came to me out of the ether. But there was no one particular person who spoke that to me. I feel like it's kind of come over a period of time out of a whole lot of different places. But it's almost one of the defining principles of the Bible, because of the way we're created. God created us, and anyway, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And do you live by that now?
I try to. I endeavour to. I think it's really easy, particularly in our culture and age, to become a victim of circumstance. and a victim of others, and to make that your kind of persona. But as I try as hard as I can to own the things that I do. One of the key Christian words for that's repentance. Repentance is actually owning up to that I did it. It wasn't somebody else who made me do it. It was me.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
Sorry, I'm just going to take a sip of water. I think that charade's got me a bit yelling too much.
Well, I have, just talking about this water, I have, there's been some comments over the last few weeks on the stream about the mugs I've been using and who owns them. And so I just want to say right now, this is my mug, given to me several years ago by my girlfriend. We started going out.
Oh,
it's called a purple Ronnie mug. So I'm going to hold it up. It's got a little cartoon there. And the little caption there is us looking gorgeously smashing, and it's got a poem.
Oh, can you read out the poem?
I can read the poem. This was a romantic poem, romantic cup given to me by my future wife. A poem for a gorgeously smashing person. However much money I pay people, some of them still won't agree that you're almost as wonderfully scrumptious and gorgeously smashing as me. And so this is my work mug. I took this into CSRO and became my morning tea mug.
Oh, lovely.
Sorry, your piece of advice.
So my piece of advice, you know, I'm trying to think back to those moments that, you know, someone's really spoken to your life or given you that really great, meaning deep. I really can't remember all that much.
Caitlin.
But I do remember one time in my life, it was actually my dad, sat me down, and there was just a lot of decisions to be made in my life and just figuring out what did I want to do and what did I want to pursue, and me being a bit over emotional and sometimes letting it all get to me a lot. He sat me down one day and he basically was like, don't lose yourself in all of this. And I think that was just great wisdom, because I think often we can let things just really drown out what's going on, and we actually lose sight of who we are in those moments, and it's easy to kind of just lose yourself a little bit. And he just sat me down and he's like, all these decisions that you have to make, they're going to keep on coming your way. You're going to be faced with this for the rest of your life. But who are you? And stay true to that.
Yeah.
And that was just really helpful for me to kind of just stop and step back a little bit and just go, who am I? And what is true then? What decisions do I need to make that are actually true to who I am?
Yeah.
And which has been so helpful for me now, 5 years later, to actually be thinking about that as I continue making decisions to go, who am I? Who has God made me to be? But also, who have I become out of the experiences?
Of course.
And actually staying true in that.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful.
Yep, those moments are pretty big, aren't they?
Yeah. We've had some other people share some of their advice that they've been given. So Duncan, 3 words, trust in Jesus.
Good advice.
Which is really helpful. Stanley, our tech man, he's put down, where's it gone? The business of life is the acquisition of memories.
That's like an aphorism.
What do you mean by that?
A saying.
Why not just say sayings?
Because aphorism sounds more cool.
Sounds like you've got an afro. Olivia, be the bigger person. So the only person you're responsible for is yourself.
Yeah.
Do unto others, give it your best as unto God. Mostly from her parents.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Parents have a lot of wisdom, I think, sometimes.
Sometimes
we don't want to listen to them, but sometimes they really share some great advice.
Yeah.
Have you ever got wisdom for your kids, that you would give to them?
Yeah, but they don't tend to listen. So, do you guys listen? I don't know.
Sometimes, obviously. Olivia's listening.
Yeah. I don't know if I've given them much profound advice. I guess maybe I have. I haven't had that. You know, I'm just going to sit you down now and pour wisdom into you. But yeah, so they tend to happen at incidental moments.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get into our passage tonight, because as you said, there's a lot of wisdom actually to be taken out of this passage, and now we're going to jump into it. So we're going through a whole chapter tonight, so it'll be a bit of a big reading, but obviously it'll be quite interesting. So take a listen, listen to the wisdom that is going to be talked about later on as you kind of go through this passage with us.
Yep.
So I'll pass it on to Ellie, and Ellie's going to be reading chapter 7 through to 8, verse 1. So thank you very much for reading the Bible, Ellie.
Thanks, guys. As Caitlin said, we're going to be reading Ecclesiastes 7 verse 1 through to 8 verse 1. If you've got a Bible there, it would be really cool if you could open up to Ecclesiastes, or maybe you could look it up on your phone, or feel free to just listen along if you want to. So Ecclesiastes 7 verse 1. A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, for death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart. Frustration is better than laughter, because a sad face is good for the heart. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. It is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the song of fools. Like the crackling of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of fools. This too is meaningless. Extortion turns a wise person into a fool, and a bribe corrupts the heart. The end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. Do not say, "Why were the old days better than these?" For it is not wise to ask such questions. Wisdom, like an inheritance, is a good thing and benefits those who see the sun. Wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter, but the advantage of knowledge is this: wisdom preserves those who have it. Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? When times are good, be happy, but when times are bad, consider this: God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these: the righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. Do not be over-righteous, neither be over-wise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be over-wicked, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes. Wisdom makes one wise person more powerful than 10 rulers in a city. Indeed, there is no one on earth who is righteous, no one who does what is right and never sins. Do not pay attention to every word people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you, for you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed others. All this I tested by wisdom, and I said, I am determined to be wise, but this was beyond me. Whatever exists is far off and most profound. Who can discover it? So I turned my mind to understand, to investigate and to search out wisdom and the scheme of things, and to understand the stupidity of wickedness and the madness of folly. I find more bitter than death the woman who is a snare, whose heart is a trap, and whose hands are chains. The man who pleases God will escape her, but the sinner she will ensnare. Look, says the teacher, this is what I have discovered. Adding one thing to another to discover the scheme of things, while I was still searching but not finding, I found one upright man among 1,000, but not one upright woman among them all. This only have I found: God created mankind upright, but they have gone in search of many schemes. Who is like the wise? Who knows the explanation of things? A person's wisdom brightens their face and changes its hard appearance. Thanks, guys.
Well, we come tonight to a collection of wise sayings, which is a bit different for the teacher. The teacher normally kind of ponders life under the sun topically, but tonight we turn to wisdom itself and how to find it with a series of wise sayings. And you might have noticed as we read that there are some strange and perhaps even offensive things it has to say about women in particular. But all is not as it seems, and we'll get to that a bit later. This chapter reads like a collection of almost random sayings, but I think there are some themes tying it all together. I think tonight that the teacher tells us 3 key things about finding true wisdom. What will it look like to live a truly wise life? Well, let's see. The first key to true wisdom is that the wise person interprets life in light of its end. The wise person interprets life in light of death. So verse 2, it's better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, for death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart. We live in a culture that tries its best to deny death. We shunt our old people off into nursing homes where we don't have to see their decline into decrepitude and death. We worship youth and vigour and newness. And we say to ourselves, live in the moment. Forget the future. Embrace now. But the teacher says in verse 3, frustration is better than laughter because a sad face is good for the heart. And in verse 4 he says, the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. You may have some temporary fun by living for pleasure and forgetting the future, but true wisdom is fully aware that this life has a use-by date. Frustration and sadness are good for the heart because they're reminders, they school us. We learn that there are limits to life. When I was young and stupid and didn't really understand my end, I lived as if there was no end, and I came very close to dying several times. But then I came face to face with death itself. I saw the end of others. I went to 5 funerals in 1 year, and I carried a coffin for the first time, and it changed me. I lost 2 of my school friends within a couple of weeks of each other to car accidents, and I learned that we are fragile and easy to break, and that life doesn't just go on, it can end all too suddenly. And as the teacher says in verse 14, we can't discover the future with any certainty. We don't know the moment of our end. But wisdom will help us to preserve our life, as he says in verse 12. And so I changed the way I lived. I don't live recklessly anymore, and it was gaining the wisdom that comes from the end that changed the way I lived. In a way, this has been the teacher's constant idea all through this book. Every single aspect of life under the sun has come up against the reality of death. What does it mean to live, to love, to work, to play, to embrace life when death is always stalking us? But, says the teacher, true wisdom and therefore true joy can only be found by confronting our finitude, not running away from it. Wisdom preserves those who have it. Wisdom helps us to live a longer and fuller life. And wisdom gives perspective on our troubles. This is why he says in verse 3 that frustration is better than laughter, and a sad face is good for the heart. At first that just sounds stupid. But the thing is, we don't grow when life is easy. We don't grow when life is hard. We learn from our failures and our frustrations. We gain perspective that helps us. No pain, no gain, right? Well, the teacher's perspective here is out there in our world, if we have eyes to see it. Some of the best common wisdom going around our world today is based on the reality of suffering and death and what this teaches us about how to live. This is why he says that the day of death is better than the day of birth in verse 1. Because honestly, what do you learn from your birthday, apart from who loves you enough to give you a present? You don't learn anything. But your day of death, it is one of the great teachers and will give you enormous wisdom if you pay attention to it. True wisdom interprets life in light of its end. That's the first key to wisdom here. The second key is that wisdom is all about balance. The wise person avoids extremes. You see the guts of this in verse 16. He says, do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be over wicked, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes. Now, at first glance, that looks like a very strange thing for a religious book to be saying. Don't be too righteous. How can a religious person be over-righteous? What does he mean? Well, for a start, let's deal with the easy part. Don't be over-wicked. I think this one is relatively simple, and we see it every day. People whose lives are ruined and sometimes end because they go down a crooked path step by step. See, no one sets out to live the most wicked life they can live. No one dreams of doing evil all day, every day, unless you're in that Groot, whatever his name is. What happens is we don't pay attention and we fail to call ourselves to account in the little things. And then the little things become bigger and bigger and bigger, and then our lives are out of control. You see this with uni students who start out binge drinking. At first it's all so cool and it's like, how drunk was I last night? I don't know, I was too drunk to tell. Cool. But then you begin to realise how awful it can be when you literally can't remember what you did and who you did it with. And the things you didn't realise you could do until you were out of control of yourself. And the wise person learns to moderate their drinking. There is nothing worse than a middle-aged person who drinks like a stupid uni student. I've seen it. It is not pretty or cool. It's just sad. I think we get don't be over wicked. But what does the teacher mean when he says don't be over righteous or over wise? Is there such a thing? Well, I think there is such a thing, and it can be profoundly destructive for a couple of reasons. Over righteousness is destructive because it leads to self-righteousness. to pride. The person who is overwhelmingly zealous to do the right thing can become the person who is filled with pride and sees themselves as better than everybody else. They begin to think that they're worthy because of who they are and what they do. And they fail to realise the really important point the teacher makes in verse 20, where he says, there is no one on earth who is righteous, no one who does what is right and never sins. And there are some personalities that are just driven towards perfection. They want to completely master everything. But you can't do that with righteousness. You cannot be morally perfect in this life under the sun. And to strive for it as if you can is to miss true wisdom and to fall into a destructive trap. Over-righteousness leads to pride, and it also leads to pain, because you begin to judge others by some unattainable standard without even realising that you can't meet that standard yourself. That's why he says in verse 21 to not pay attention to every word people say. It will only hurt you, and it'll make you into a hypocrite because you do the same things. Isn't this just a sad description for so much interaction we have today on social media? Us judging others for what they say, even as we do the same sorts of things ourselves. And finally, over-righteousness leads to disillusionment, because the outcomes don't seem to match up. In verse 15 we see what we all know, what we've all seen, that many times it's the good who die young and the evil who live to a ripe old age. Being overzealous to be perfect can be soul-destroying. Not only because it leads to pride and pain, but because it doesn't lead to where we think it should, to longer and happier lives. The good die young too. So the advice of the teacher is to live with balance. Avoid the extremes. Don't pursue evil. Don't go down that path. But also don't think you can be absolutely perfect either. Understand that perfection is beyond you. The final thing the teacher says about true wisdom is just crazy nuts. Because true wisdom recognises that perfect wisdom is beyond us. So take a look at verse 23, what he says. All this I tested by wisdom, and I said, I am determined to be wise. But this was beyond me. This whole book has been about wisdom, right? The whole way along, the teacher has been testing things with wisdom. And now when it comes to it, he says, it's impossible to be wise? What is he saying? Well, it's important to see here that the teacher is using the word wisdom in a couple of different ways. The first way is the way he's been using it for most of the book. Wisdom as reason. Wisdom as a clear-minded investigation of our experiences. This is what we all mean when we say, use your head. Think about it. See the way the world works. It's that kind of wisdom. But there is a second meaning of the word wisdom. This is wisdom as a state of life, having the complete perspective on all things, combining knowledge with experience and having it match perfectly. And just like righteousness, the teacher says that this state of complete wisdom is unreachable. It's beyond us. Now, I promised at the start that we would get to the strangely misogynistic verses about women. What does he mean when he talks about woman as a snare in verse 26 and not one upright woman among them all in verse 28? Well, the key to these verses is to understand how wisdom books talk about wisdom. Wisdom and folly are both personified as women. So in the book of Proverbs, which is probably the greatest ancient collection of wisdom that exists, chapter 8 of that book is given to extolling the virtues of Lady Wisdom, who was with God at the moment of creation and who calls us to listen to her. And in the same way, folly can also be personified as a woman. And I think that's what's going on here. The woman who is a snare in verse 26 is Lady Folly. This flows straight out of the stupidity and madness of folly in verse 25. What he's talking about is how folly seduces and traps us with false promises. So what about verse 28? Well, the key to this verse is to do something I rarely do and take a look at the original language, ancient Hebrew. Because in the original language, the word upright isn't there at all. It's just been inserted by the translator to try and make sense of the sentence. This is how verse 28 reads when you translate it literally. He says, I found one person among 1,000, but not one woman among them all. Now what's he saying there? Well, I think what the teacher is saying is that he's good at looking. He can find the needle in the haystack, the 1 in 1,000. But that one woman eludes him. Lady Wisdom he cannot find. He's just repeating what he's already said in verse 23, that wisdom is unattainable. And this is the third key, that we will spend our lives pursuing wisdom, but we will never catch her. We will hunt for wisdom, but we'll never quite find her. And so the truly wise person will be humble, because they will know the limits of their wisdom. The worst kind of person we know is the know-it-all, aren't they? The person who always thinks they have all the answers. We avoid people like that, don't we? And the teacher just says, yep. Don't be so foolish as to think you've mastered wisdom. So there we are. 3 keys to wisdom. Know your end, seek to be balanced, and know that wisdom is a destination you'll always be travelling towards, but never arrive at. Because true wisdom is a destination beyond the sun. So to find it, we will need to find the one person who's gone beyond the sun, which is why Christians look to Jesus. And it's why we think Jesus is worth investigating and listening to, because we believe he has a wisdom that we can only ever dream of, the wisdom of our Creator, true wisdom and complete wisdom. Now, I think we're going to say this at some point in the next few weeks, but next year at Tuesday Night Live, we're going to investigate the life of Jesus. We're going to travel around Palestine with him and hear what wisdom he offers. So join us as we do that. But in the meantime, why not grab hold of a Bible and read one of the 4 Gospels for yourself, one of the biographies of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke or John. And as always, come and ask your questions in the comments.
Hey there everyone. So if you don't know me, I'm Jess. I'm also studying at Bathurst campus. I'm studying criminal justice. So I'll be praying for us now in light of the talk, but we'll also be praying for Indigenous Australian people tonight as well. So if you're able, close your eyes, bow your heads, and let's pray to God. Dear Lord, we know you care for everyone equally and love all your children regardless of race. We thank you for the diversity that different cultures bring to the world, and we ask that we may celebrate these differences as representatives of you on earth. We think especially of Indigenous Australian peoples and the struggles that they face. Lord, we know that you have compassion on how they were and still are treated, and we know that you see them. And we know that you hear their prayers. Please be with organisations such as Oxfam, Close the Gap, Tribal Warrior and National Aboriginal Sporting Chance Academy. Lord, we thank you for all the volunteers and employees that strive to improve Indigenous Australian people's health, as well as giving Indigenous Australian youth the tools they need to have equal opportunities. Lastly, Lord, we just want to thank you. We thank you that you sent your son, Jesus, to die for everyone. And we ask that we remember that in these times where there is inequality between ethnicities. Lord, please help us to treat everyone with the love that you have shown us through your son's death. And in Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Thank you very much for praying for us, Jess. And thank you again, always, for giving us a talk and helping us just kind of digest this chapter of Ecclesiastes. Really interesting how you were right when you first started in kind of thinking, these all seem like very different with wise sayings, and yet there is a theme throughout it all. To pull it in those 3 ways was really helpful for me, because often I come to these chapters and I just think, what's really happening here? Like, okay, cool, is it just a whole bunch of random things going on? But to actually see a bit of a picture there, I hope you guys found it helpful as well as we went through that chapter. Now, of course, question time, we always have a bunch of questions both about Ecclesiastes and what we've talked about, but we also have a couple of questions a bit outside of the passage tonight, so we'll get to some of them as well. The first question is from Michael. Now, you've touched on this a little bit already, but he brings up the passage that we read through tonight. So chapter 7, verse 29. I'll read out the verse again. This only have I found, God made man upright, but men have gone in search of many schemes. Now, you've touched on that a little bit about actually talking about what was meant there, perhaps in the original language, because he's asked, what is that actually referring to? Is it people before or after sin? are only Adam and Eve made upright, or are all people made upright? So do you just want to talk about that perhaps a little bit more?
Yeah. I think, Michael, that it is pretty much the way you say, that God made us straight and we've turned things crooked. And so God made life straightforward. God made us to live in that sense with clarity. But we wanted to wander off into a crooked path. And I think that's exactly what it's talking about. We've actually turned away from God and His wisdom, and so we're in this morass of crooked pathways and difficult things to find. And so I think that's exactly what he's referring to, yeah.
Okay, so if you have any follow-up questions on that, anyone at all, even Michael, please come back to that.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to jump outside of the passage now to 1 Samuel.
Yeah.
So Andrew's got a question about 1 Samuel chapter 16 and chapter 17.
Yep.
So in 1 Samuel 16, he's talking about Saul sends messages to David's father, Jesse, and he's basically asking him to send David because he wants him to join. So referencing about verse 19, Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, "Send me your son David, who is with the sheep." So he knows who David is, he knows who Jesse is. But then later on, in the next chapter,
he doesn't seem to know.
Saul asks a question, especially when he sees David kill Goliath in this battle scene. And he sends someone to go find out whose son this young man is. Why is it that all of a sudden Saul seems to forget who Jesse is and how David kind of fits into the picture when he's specifically sent for him?
People give lots of different answers to this question. One is that the book of 1 Samuel is stitching together a few different accounts, and so these things are mixed up. The other thing to recognise, though, is Saul himself is a bit of a twisted character. He's a bit tortured mentally. He's a bit of a mental case, Saul. And one of the issues with him that brings David into his presence in chapter 16 is this kind of evil spirit who's tormenting him. And so it could well be that Saul just doesn't know. And also it's messengers who go and get David from his father. Saul may actually not know exactly who he is in chapter 16.
Right.
And so this is the thing, Saul sent messengers. And so the messengers may know this information, but he himself, he's a king.
He doesn't actually know David personally.
Yeah, you're a rock star like me, you just walk in, you just expect things to be done for you, Stanley does the tech for you, you don't ask about that sort of stuff. And I think Saul's like that. He's a king. He expects things to be done for him. And so I imagine in chapter 16 that these things have been done for him. And so David's mentioned, but he may not actually know much about him other than that he's the soothing strummer.
Yeah.
And so that, I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, that's really
so you've got a few different things to pick from there, Andrew. It could be that Saul's a bit of a mental case, and so he's just unaware of things. Also, he's a rock star. He's a king, and he doesn't. Kings don't know all the people who wander around, all the people, cockroaches who wander around them and do things for them.
Yeah. Interesting. Thanks for that. That's helpful. That's something that I learned tonight as well. Okay. We've got a question from Stanley.
Yep.
How do we accept something we feel God is telling us to do that we don't necessarily want to do without being salty about it?
I don't know that you can. I think sometimes we feel resentful about things we know that are right to do. Sometimes it's a joy to do the right thing. Sometimes to love people, to care for people, to put yourself for people is a joy, and you genuinely feel it's joyful. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes doing the right thing is okay, and sometimes doing the right thing is incredibly painful. I think that over time you can learn to see that God's way is good, and that may lead you to resent it less. But I think at times all of us are going to feel a bit salty about...
Yeah.
I mean, don't you feel salty at times about doing the right thing?
Sure, yeah. I think we all do. I think it's our human instinct to feel that way. It makes me think of a conversation that we were having actually recently about hindsight.
Yep.
About often some of the things that have happened in our life, we've only actually been able to look back in hindsight and actually see, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's how I ended up here. That's where the direction was going.
Mhm.
We we didn't want to, I never wanted to come to Bathurst. Like that was really, I really did not want to come here.
To
And
stay.
yeah, to stay, it's been like 7 years now. But that was never in my plans.
Yeah.
And yet I look back and I think if I hadn't have come to Bathurst, I wouldn't be here today.
Mm.
And I wouldn't have understood what was actually going on.
Mm.
But how hindsight is
Yeah.
actually, it takes a long time to stop being salty.
Yeah.
Because you need to look back and realise, oh, okay, I get, yes, that
Yeah.
was uncomfortable, I didn't like that moment, but I see the worthwhile in it now.
Yeah. Some of the lessons you learn hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that it's natural to feel resentful at times, and I think you can get better at it, but then there'll just be other things, other lessons you'll be learning.
Is there any ways that you can cope with it? Because hindsight's going to take a while. The pain is still going to be there. So what do you do in that pain?
You need to be resolved to act on what's right, not on how you feel. I think that sounds like whatever, but it's profoundly important in our day and age. In our day and age, we're taught to act according to the way we feel, and if it feels okay, and if it doesn't feel okay, then I don't need to do it. You need to be resolved to act on what is right, not on how you feel about it. That's the. If you have that resolve, then you'll look back and you will have less regrets. And you may have learned some hard lessons, but you learned them well rather than really badly. And that's the thing, you can learn your lessons, you can learn them in some ways well or badly.
Yeah.
To learn them well is to do the right thing and go through that, the suffering that goes with that, or the pain that goes with that, and come out the other side and go, God taught me things from that, but I did the right thing.
Yeah.
The bad way to do it is to act according to your feelings and not do what's right, and then you get to the end of that, and what do you look back and see? You look back and see the damage you've done to yourself and to other people. And I've seen both of those things, and I can tell you, I'd rather live with a bit of saltiness and yeah.
Yeah, true. It's a hard lesson to learn, I think.
It is.
And it's one of those things where we can share all our wisdom on it, but sometimes experience is going to be your best teacher.
Yep. So I think in many ways, and that's a key. We could talk for an hour about this, but a key lesson is actually one of the key things the Bible talks about is self-control.
Yeah.
That is actually about living according to what you know is right, not according to what you feel. Massively important.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we'll jump to a question from Duncan.
Yep.
Is it right to desire long life? And then he quotes, "For to die is gain for the Christian."
Simple answer, yeah. Living is good and dying is bad, and it doesn't matter who you are, that's true. Now, Christians know that to die is gain. Why? In the sense that we are gaining Christ. We are in Christ, and so we know that that Christ has something better for us. He has resurrection. That's the key thing that Christians look forward to, that we will be raised up, and that life will be good and will go on, right? That'll be eternal life. But that still doesn't mean that life here and now isn't an experience that we have that's important to us. And so, think about it with respect to other people. You don't want to lose other people, and when they die, you grieve. You are lost because life is good and death is bad.
Yeah.
And it's just a reflection of that. And so the desire to live a long life is not bad. To be afraid of scary things, and to avoid them in order to preserve your life is not bad. It's normal and sensible.
Yeah. And also, I think you think of Paul in his situation, and he talks about that tension between, yes, to die is gain, but to live, there's a life to live here now.
Yeah.
There's a reason, there's a purpose that we've got.
Yeah.
So let's use up those moments and let's actually desire that.
That is so true, isn't it? That I think if you look at your life and you see there's no purpose or point to it, then you desire it. But when you see that there is a purpose and a point to life, that to love other people, to serve others, to do good in God's world is actually important and a purpose and a meaning, then there is a point to living and to desiring to go on living. It's not that I think what you're right about, Duncan, is you need to avoid desiring to live at the expense of looking ahead. The good life now is a life lived in light of the world to come, and shaping ourselves in so that we are fit for the life to come. Yeah.
And is it true that we're kind of going to work, we're answering this question a little bit in Ecclesiastes, because it's raising up that question.
Yeah.
What is the point? What is the purpose? If life is meaningless, why?
Yeah.
And we're actually moving, and we're getting, closer there. We've got 5 more weeks after this week, where we're actually going to actually have an answer to that a little bit.
But look, here's a really profound and interesting difference between Ecclesiastes and our world today. I've been saying over and over again that this book could be written last week. Okay, and it could be. However, think about the difference. We look nihilistically at our world. We look at the purposelessness and meaninglessness of life in this world. We reflect exactly the same things as Ecclesiastes. And what does it lead to? It leads to an increase in suicide and feelings of worthlessness But the author of Ecclesiastes can say meaningless, breath, vapour, emptiness, futility, and yet life is good and important. He does not contemplate suicide. Suicide is not his answer. The negation of life is not his answer. It's not wisdom. It's not wise to look at the futility of this life and think that negating life is good. That is not a conclusion to come to. But it's interesting that difference in our world, and that's perhaps a more pagan kind of view of things, a different view than a Christian one. But we often muddle them up together.
Yeah. And it's a hard topic, I think, sometimes to talk about, because death is reality. And that's something that you brought up tonight, that actually, when we look in light of the end, that's how we actually need to find gain wisdom here and now, because actually the reality of the end is sad and it is hard. It's a big topic to go through.
Anyway, there are probably other questions and other things we need to talk about there, so maybe we'll...
Yeah, if you have any follow-up questions on that itself, please keep on asking those questions and we can spend more time on it. Jumping back into Ecclesiastes as well, Michael has a question. If we can't truly gain wisdom, how should we then be asking for it from God, as we're told in James? So then he quotes James chapter 1 verse 5, and if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. And also Proverbs talks a lot about asking for wisdom. Solomon himself asked for wisdom.
He
so
does.
how do we deal with that?
The point I think Ecclesiastes is trying to make is not that you shouldn't seek wisdom, it's that you shouldn't recognise, you should recognise it's a destination you'll never arrive at fully in the here and now. So that you should be provisional. And asking for wisdom is that humble act of assuming I need more, I need to grow. And so we ought to ask. And that's what I was driving at the end, where I was talking about Christians looking to Jesus, because Jesus embodies wisdom. He is the true wise man. It's one of the kind of threads that runs through the Gospels about Jesus. He speaks true life to us. He helps us to understand our life truly. It's what we're going to see next year. That Jesus is the true wise man. We tend to think as Christians about categories like salvation, and that's tremendously important about Jesus, to see that he is someone who saves us and who rescues us and who atones for us and fixes out the problem that we've caused. But alongside of that is another important strand that we're going to look at next year when we look at Jesus, and that is Jesus as the wise man, that Jesus speaks wisdom to us. He sees us truly. He doesn't just embody our experience as a person, he speaks true wisdom from our Creator about that experience, about that life. And that's really important. So Jesus is a source of wisdom, and so therefore we can come and ask for wisdom, the wisdom that comes from the one who's died and rose from the dead. And he will give us wisdom that is the wisdom of the life to come.
So do you think when we're asking for wisdom, it's a bit about what are we actually truly asking for? So if we're asking for wisdom, we're not asking, are we trying to ask for this complete thing that we're going to know everything on, or are we asking to grow more and more?
Yeah. I ask for wisdom the way I search Google. You know how you search Google, you
just Google bomb
you
it?
search well, you search for an answer or something. So you got a question about something, you search for an answer, and you look for the first post that agrees with you, and then that's the answer. The first post on your side. And I feel like I ask for wisdom the same kind of way. I'm looking for God to affirm my choices. I'm looking for God to justify me, you know what I mean? I'm not looking for God to say, yeah, no, you sucked at that, or you need to go and apologise for that, or you need to think differently about this. So, yeah.
interesting way of asking for wisdom, isn't it?
Well, that's what we're like, aren't it? We're a
Yeah.
bit selfish.
Yeah, true. Okay, I think we've got time for perhaps one more question.
Yep.
Now, Tasha's written almost an essay here,
Okay.
so bear with me because I haven't really had time to read it completely. Well, apparently, there we go, we've got it. Okay, so I'm gonna read it out and we'll see where we go. Okay, maybe we can't. Since we can't ever gain perfection, is it wrong for us to only be aiming to improve ourselves deeply? We should obviously still be striving to be Christian-like in all parts, in some parts of our life. So, to improve ourselves deeply in a specific area, I think she's asking. Is it wise for ourselves to be perfect in all parts of ourselves, or is it okay to only focus on particular things? So that's kind of like a bit of a practically growth.
Yeah. There's a lot to
Growth,
that.
personality, character, everything chucked in.
There's a lot to that, Tash, and I'm not sure I'll do the question justice. So
We can always come back to it on
yeah.
Thursday.
I think the thing. We'll have a go, and then maybe throw another question in that we might need to follow up. I think it's. Life is complicated, and what we tend to do is we tend to do one thing at a time. We actually aren't great multitaskers. None of us are.
Not even women?
Don't believe women when they tell you that. Women are the worst at anyway.
Okay, none of that.
No, we're not great at multitasking in general, and so I think wisdom would say work at one thing at a time. And often when we look at other people and we're trying to help them, we tend to do that. Take one step at a time. What's the one thing that you can change that will make have the biggest impact and do the biggest thing? We tend to look to see people grow step by step. We don't take someone who's here and expect them just to jump over here. No. We move slowly together. And so I think it's fine to focus on one thing at a time. There's wisdom in that. And maybe that's then thinking about, well, what's the single thing now that would be good to focus on? What's the thing that will actually bear the most fruit? And it might be all sorts of things. It might be physical fitness. It might be dealing with issues in the past. It might be learning a skill. There might be lots of different things that are important for you to grow as a person. Part of wisdom is working out which one to do, I guess, in which order. How to map it out. So I think we run into trouble often when we try to do everything at once. And it can be a problem for those of us who are perfectionists, that we strive almost too hard and we destroy ourselves with it. So yeah, it's something to be careful of.
Do you think that's something that often we do? We often set a bar and we say, okay, all of us needs to look completely like that. And then we fall so far short of it so many times that we just kind of get discouraged and continue getting discouraged and then just struggle in that motivation because we're like, well, are we ever going to reach that bar that we've set?
So it's discouraging. And I think it's discouraging, but it could also lead to the opposite problem. We set the bar too low and we jump
we never
it.
Push more.
We jump it and then we become self-righteous and judgmental. Those sort of things,
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, Tash, and one I think that we will come back to on Thursday, perhaps give us a bit more time to actually think more about it. And kind of think deeply.
I feel like there is more to dig into there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that brings us to an end of another Tuesday Night Live. There's obviously some more questions that we haven't had time to get to, but we will get to on Thursday. So for those people, we'll tag you and keep your eye out for that. But until then, we hope you guys are enjoying continuing on in Ecclesiastes and just gaining more and more wisdom and just being struck with some of those questions about what does it truly mean to be wise and how do we yearn for that and how do we continue pushing beyond the sun to look to that wisdom. And Zeno said we've got a big plan for next year of going through Luke very deeply and actually looking at Jesus and his wisdom and why is he the one that we need to look to get beyond the sun. And we're so excited for that. But we still have 5 weeks left here for the year.
Yep, we do.
We still have to finish Ecclesiastes first. So we're looking forward to actually getting to the end of another book here in Tuesday Night Live. This would be our 2nd book this year.
Wow.
So that's really exciting. So perhaps maybe read a bit more of Ecclesiastes in the meantime. But until then, we'll see you on Tuesday next week.
See you then.
See you guys.